Good morning, everyone, for another veteran education series. My name is Chris Jackson. With me today, we have Josh Thompson and a keynote speaker, Ben Goodrich. Just a reminder, this series is to help veterans and individuals in general with financial and just general education. Myself, Chris Jackson, I'm a financial professional. I help people manage their money and help them with getting the proper protection on the life and disability side. And with me today, I have Josh Thompson. Josh, you want to take a minute to share what you do?
Yeah, definitely appreciate it, Chris. So my name is Joshua Thompson. I was in the Marine Corps. I ended up starting my own business, Thompson Tax Group. But what we really focus on at the end of the day is tax planning for you and your business more specifically. And we also do some tax preparation, but we do more of a proactive approach to your tax situation to put in some new strategies that you may not have heard of. So that's kind of what we do at Thompson Tax Group. If you ever need anything, feel free to reach out to myself. Feel free to reach out to Chris if you have any questions, or if we can even point you guys in the right direction, just give us a call. That's why we do this. We're here to help you guys.
Yeah, awesome. And I just wanted to introduce today our keynote speaker. So Ben Goodrich. Ben, he's a retired Army veteran who was in Bulgaria. And he actually was a Bulgarian and Chinese linguist. And he was also a human intel collector. He has 6 sons, 2 daughters, and 2 grandchildren. His job, he loves his job for adding security and peace of mind to those that he works with. Some of his hobbies are fishing and camping. And the funnest thing that he's done is he got his helicopter pilot's license. And for him, one of the things he enjoys the most also is owning his own business, where he can be more involved than being just an employee. And it's also more rewarding to be able to help those that he meets with. So, John or Ben, is there anything else you wanted to share about yourself before we just jump right in?
I don't know. I mean, that's a lot about me, I think, Okay. But I will clarify. I got, I have 4 biological children and 4 stepchildren. So it was a hers, mine, and ours effort. So that wasn't all me, and all that work there.
Awesome. Yeah, I know Ben well. He's a great family man. He's right now, him and his family live in Georgia. Grew up a long time in Utah, and he helps people around the country with their insurance. And he does focus a lot on helping veterans, and that's one thing that he's talked to me about, is really wanting to help veterans understand how home and auto insurance and business insurance work. So today we're going to go over and do a little bit of a 20,000-foot view of insurance in that realm today. So we'll just get right started. So first question for you, Ben, is auto insurance. So what is auto insurance, and what does full coverage mean when it comes to auto insurance?
Right. So full coverage is kind of a misnomer. Full coverage, when most people talk about it, means, hey, I have liability, comprehension, and property damage, right? It means I have the 3, but I mean, that could be any dollar amount, right? Most state minimums are around the $25,000 per person, $50,000 per accident, $25,000 per, property damage. Mm-hmm. It's not that much, right? You go to the hospital, you send somebody to the hospital being in an accident, and it's going to be a little more than $25,000. Personal testimony, when I was 7 years old, I was hit by a car, and I was in the hospital for 8 weeks. Wow. Broken femur, traction, 8 weeks and a half body cast in the 8 weeks, and on crutches, and then therapy. So needless to say, $25,000 wouldn't have gone anywhere, right? And at that point, the person's getting sued. So that's a big thing, and it just can't. I actually had somebody who called me. He's like, yeah, I got full coverage. I'm like, you have the state minimums. I ran him a quote. He had USAA, and I ran him a quote for the maximum I could offer was $250,000, $500,000. Mm-hmm. 10 times the difference. I actually saved him $100 a year.
Wow.
So full coverage is kind of a misnomer, and it's really about what do you need to cover your assets and cover you as a person and your family.
Yeah. And you bring up like a really good point. There's a story of my wife's cousin. They had a Tesla, and they were driving it around. They ended up getting hit from someone that didn't have insurance, and since they didn't have insurance, it didn't cover the Tesla, and their insurance that they had on the Tesla wasn't enough to cover. So the Tesla just sat in the garage until they had enough money to pay to get it fixed, or just dump it because it was too expensive. So you definitely bring up a good point. But I know, money's a big thing on people's mind at the end of the day, which they shouldn't only focus on money, how much something costs, but really when it comes down to it, what are some discounts we could look for when we're looking at auto insurance?
That's a great question. So a lot of the discounts, one, everybody hears in the commercials is bundling, right? Hey, bundle your home and auto, and it's true. That gives you probably one of the biggest discounts. Next one, good driving record, good insurance score, and your, just your past history. Obviously, teenagers, you have teenagers, they're going to drive your rates up. It's just, they're horrible drivers. Right? But that's the truth of the matter, right? They make up a small population of the drivers, but take up a large population of the accidents. But having good grades for your teenagers, obviously, and then having a driving course that they can do obviously helps that. One of the big things you can actually do that a lot of the insurance companies do now is you can have what's called driving tracking. For 90 days, they'll track your acceleration speed, your braking speed, and your turning speed, right? And how far you drove. And they'll go, okay, this is how much you drive. This is your driving habits. You're very safe. You're not very safe. And so they can take, and usually when you sign up for this, you get a discount up front of anywhere from 5 to 10% off your rates. And then some of these companies, if you are an amazing driver and everything else, they'll discount it up to 30%.
Wow.
So just depending on the company, some are around 10, 15%, some are all the way up to 30%. So it just depends on your driving. So that's probably one of the biggest ways to get a discount right now would be those things.
Yeah, I think I definitely need to make a call to figure out this driving tracking thing they got going on.
Right.
I mean, we're in the area of COVID. Is there anything that involved COVID that affects our auto insurance or coverage or rates, anything like that?
Absolutely. A lot of insurance companies have automatically reduced their rates because of COVID, because they've seen a lot less accidents and everything else. Another thing is, hey, I got a car that's just sitting here now because I'm home all the time. Yeah. Right? Yeah. It's gone. So you can call them and report them, say, hey, I'm only driving this 10 miles a week instead of the 10, 15 miles a day or whatever you were commuting, and get that. Or you can get a new quote and say, hey, this is only for pleasure driving at the moment. I'm not driving it at all because we don't need to. We're both stuck at home. And then that can just drastically reduce the rates too, getting a new quote saying, hey, I'm not using this right now the way I used to and have it reported.
Interesting. I'll definitely have to make that call too.
One thing I will just add, I personally did the same thing with, you brought up USAA. I'm not talking bad about any individual company. I think they all have their place. But I think it's a misconception that everyone thinks USAA is always the best for military, and that's not always the case. You want to.
Well, and now they bring that up, being military, I shop USAA every single time I shop my insurance. Mm-hmm. And I have it for my banking. I have it for cards. And I have it. I love USAA. I have it for my kids, right? But I have yet to find the coverage. I've always been able to beat the coverage for USAA myself. Now that's not always true. It depends on where you're at, what state you're in, whether or not USAA is being aggressive in that state. So it just depends on where you're at, what's going on.
Awesome. Okay, well, the next question I have for you is home insurance. So what do you really need when it comes to your home? Obviously, home rates the values just keep going up and up and up. Do you need to call? You can say, hey, I need to raise my insurance on my home. Some people just don't understand how home insurance really works.
Right. Well, a lot of insurance companies have what's called an 80% rule. You have to have your home covered up to at least at 80% of what it costs to repair your home in order for them to do a full payout or on a partial thing. So, for example, let's say your home's worth $100,000. You only have it insured for $80,000. When I say $100,000, that's what it would cost the insurance company to rebuild your home. But you have it at $75,000, right? So you're only at 75%. You have a claim that's $10,000, right? They're only gonna pay you $9,500 or close to that, depending on the percentage, because they base it off the percentage of coverage you have because you don't have the full coverage. So, and cost of building has gone up significantly. Now, there are caveats in place. Let's say you originally had it insured for 100,000, now it costs 130,000, but because that's kind of a sudden increased cost because of like a hurricane or something like that, all of a sudden the prices skyrocket, then yeah, you can have a clause in your insurance company, in your home insurance binder to cover that. If you don't, then yeah, you're going to eat that extra 30,000. So as things progress, you need to make sure that every couple of years you have the right amount of insurance coverage on your home, and that because rates do go up, everything goes up. Your coverage should go up every year or every couple of years to make sure you're within that realm still.
Got it. I know I have a question. I used to have a really good friend that he kept in his house. He kept guns in there, gold bars in there, expensive coins, like all this, like jewelry from his wife. Is there other things you could have insured in your home as well, or is that something completely different?
Well, there are two ways to do it. A lot of companies will do endorsements, which allows you to have some of that jewelry and those gold bars and those different things added on to the home insurance. Or you can have what's called a personal insurance policy and have it be its own separate thing. There's pros and cons to both. Usually if you include it on your home insurance, it's a little bit cheaper. Okay. Right? But the con is if you have something like that stolen, it's now a home insurance claim versus your personal policy claim that's covering just that stuff. So the other insurance policy is a little more expensive, but it's its own entity. So if you have a theft, right, but don't have to do a home insurance claim, right, it'll just go against that, right? You have an auto claim and your home insurance doesn't go up. You have a theft claim, your home insurance won't go up, right? So that's one of those things, and there are companies out there like Travelers. They cover up to $50,000 worth of guns, where most companies only cover up to like $2,500, $5,000, depending on the package you choose.
That's not very much for a lot of us.
It's not very much. And so that's where an expert, you really need to figure out, hey, what do I have? What's it worth? And what companies can cover me, right? Because you can't fit the same bullet in every gun, right? So.
Exactly. It's a great analogy. All right, let's see. So I know really at the end of the day, I kind of have the next big question for you is, what's flood insurance? Is there a difference between flood insurance and other insurance? What exactly is it altogether?
Okay, so there's several different types of emergency insurance, right? Here in Georgia, we don't have earthquakes very much, right? There in California, they're looking to fall off the face of the earth sometime, right? So it just depends where you're at, what kind of coverage, catastrophe coverages you need, right? A lot of people's like, oh, I don't live in a flood zone. That's another misnomer, right? Everybody lives in a flood zone. You may live in a minimum risk flood zone, or you may live in a high risk or special risk flood zone, right? But everybody lives in a flood zone. Thing is, right, every home insurance policy covers for fire. But flood insurance has been a complicated beast, especially for the last few decades, because we've had so many floods, Hurricane Katrina, a couple of these other disasters that really put a strain on the National Flood Insurance Program. But there have been emerging several companies that now offer flood insurance basically through the private entity instead of through the government program, and you can get all sorts of coverage, and not for not very expensive either. But for the most part, you're actually 26 times more likely to have a flood than have a fire in your home.
Interesting.
So you wouldn't have a insurance policy that didn't have fire on it, but so many people don't have flood insurance, and actually over a 30-year life of the loan, you are 26% likely to have a flood.
Wow.
And so it's actually a lot more of a risk than most people think. And it's really, you can get flood insurance for as low as a couple $100s a year that'll cover, a basic flood, all the way up to, full, then you can get all the way up to full, destruction in your home. So depending on what it is, especially if you're in a minimum risk area, it's still the highest risk you have is a flood. So.
Yeah. Got it.
Awesome. Well, I guess on that note as well, it's going to bring up earthquakes. So what were your thoughts on earthquake insurance? You talked about, California falling off the face of the world, right? I mean,
Right.
earthquakes, how it's probably going to happen, right?
Yeah. So earthquakes are their own separate policy, just like a flood insurance is its own separate policy. So is an earthquake. An earthquake, it just depends on your region, right? I remember when we were living in Utah, close to before I retired from the military, we had in one winter, we had 3 earthquakes that we woke us up in the middle of the night. Still, they were fairly small, right? Yeah. On the Richter scale, they were all below, I think, a 4 or, but it was, or around a 4. But still, it was enough that I was like, man, maybe I should have some more insurance on my earthquake policy, And there are things you have to be careful with. Flood insurance and earthquake insurance, there are what called time clauses. You can't be like, oh, we just had a little minor earthquake yesterday. I'm gonna go get an earthquake policy and just be safe and have it affect tomorrow. No, it takes 30 days to be effective. And flood insurance, the national program's 30 days. The private program's 10 days generally, unless you're refinancing, buying, or doing something, or selling the house, something of that nature where it's transferring of ownership. So when it comes to those are things you have to plan for ahead of time. So, yeah, great question.
Awesome. Okay, well, the next thing let's talk about is umbrella insurance. I think we alluded a little bit to personal items, but umbrella insurance covers even a broader range than that, I assume. Hence, right, the word umbrella. So maybe go into just a few of the things that umbrella coverage, aside from what we've already talked about, and why it would be so important.
Okay. That's a great point. For first thing I want to talk about umbrella insurance is it has requirements, right? It requires you to have your cars at a certain level of insurance, generally anywhere from 100,000, 300,000, or 250,000, 500,000 for the liability portion of your auto insurance. It generally also requires that your homeowner's insurance is at the 500,000 or more for liability. Which also with home insurance, the difference between 300,000 in liability and 500,000 in liability is usually only around $20, $30 a year, generally speaking, right? So it's not that much, but it qualifies you for umbrella insurance. The way that works is if you have umbrella insurance, is considered fairly cheap, right? $1 million, $2 million of liability coverage for your home and your auto, and what other vehicles if you got a boat, you have an RV, you have a pool, those sort of things. It'll cover all of those things. You have a business, you can actually have a business umbrella as well. And what it does is after the insurance pays out, your auto, your home, wherever else, that will continue to pay out up to its additional $1 million or $2 million limit. And so it's literally an umbrella because you have everything you need beside you, but it's going to cover you all in the case of a catastrophe, right? And it's all just going to come raining down on you.
Wow.
Wow, man. I mean, I know a lot of people are thinking, hey, umbrella insurance, I've heard about it, but really, when do you recommend someone get umbrella insurance, or when do you think it's needed?
Well, I would say you have a pool, a trampoline. Those are the 2 major things people get hurt on, right? And pool being number 1 for you got kids drowning, unfortunately, right? So that's a big one. You have a business. I always recommend having insurance, umbrella insurance. You have a boat, anything that goes on the water, jet skis, anything where you have friends other than your family going with you, right? I recommend that umbrella insurance because if something happens, you don't want your friend who's now, it's like your friend's not necessarily going to sue you, but the insurance company might, because they're like, hey, we need to have all these things taken care of for this person, right? And so anywhere there's that huge risk, I would say you need to have that. I'm trying to think of other situations like, business. Oh, teenage drivers. I highly recommend it. I have teenage drivers. I'm just telling you, they're scary. So, but just anything that adds additional risk that is not common, right? if all you have is your home and your autos and you got nothing else, hey, you probably don't need umbrella insurance. I would still recommend it, but I mean, I would say it's kind of up to the amount of risk you want to take. But when it comes to anything else, like I have a pool at my house, guaranteed, and it's an enclosed pool. I have 3 doors that reach it. It's locked all the time, right? But I absolutely have an umbrella policy because there is no way that I'm going to have that type of liability without having the coverage.
Yeah, definitely. And you bring up a good point. I know I always come to stories, but there's a teenager. In the past, was working with a client. His teenager got in an accident, and the auto insurance didn't cover all that happened because it was a really bad accident. A few people got seriously injured. And so they didn't have umbrella insurance. They ended up having, they got sued multiple times by 3 different people because there's 3 different people involved in the accident. They're trying to figure this out. And this guy just retired from the FBI. He's like, living good life now. Now he has all these lawsuits thinking about going back to work because he wasn't properly covered for, whatever it was, a month to make sure this happens. So definitely bring up a real good point there.
Yeah. So anywhere that risk is heightened, I recommend it because usually for a few $100s a year, you can have an additional $1 million to $2 million of coverage. I mean, and that really, like you said, can make the difference. I do know of a guy who they went out fishing together. Both of them died. He had a life insurance policy, but his friends didn't. And so the friend's wife, actually, the widow, sued, and the umbrella paid her out $1 million because she was now without her husband and a way to provide for her family. So it definitely can make a difference.
That's a great point you bring up. When I do my financial model, I'll look at that too and say, well, as we're looking at things like life insurance, how much do you feel that how much does the insurance company say that your life is worth, right? And there's a maximum amount, and you both know about that. But you got to consider on the flip side, like you just brought up, well, if somebody else doesn't have it, what are they going to want? They're going to want the maximum amount of that, of their, what their life was worth. And so that was something to consider, especially if you have money, right? They're going to go after it. And I just actually had collaborated with another networking meeting earlier today where there was actually a personal injury attorney that was speaking. He was talking about minimum drivers and lawsuits and things. And that's something he actually had one of the biggest lawsuits in the country against State Farm. And it was a thing where they didn't cover it all. And it was like ended up becoming like $10 million worth of coverage because of the way they mishandled it. But case in point, there's a lot of liability, especially when you're considering if someone is killed. That's a big deal, and there's a lot of vulnerability. So I think you bring up a great point that it depends how much risk you want. Everyone's got an insurance plan, right? Any kind of insurance, and in this regard, umbrella insurance is your plan's either that you have coverage or you don't. If you don't have it, your plan's a little bit skewed. Maybe let's get a second mortgage, right? And let's get into a lot of debt. So great points for both of you. So let's go on to the next question. So let's kind of shift gears. We try to market towards helping business owners too, not just the general public. So can you talk about a little bit about business insurance? So whether it's a veteran or just an individual that's watching this, that's just starting their own business, maybe they've been in business for a while and they just don't understand maybe where they have some blind spots. And so talk about business insurance and why it's so important.
Well, number one, nobody's perfect, right? You're going to make mistakes. It's called E&O, errors and omissions, right? If I make a mistake, it's an error. If I forget to do something, it's a omission, right? And I could be doing whatever I do in my business. If I make a mistake, all of a sudden I'm getting sued, right? Because the product didn't work, or what I built didn't perform right, or whatever it is, or my service caused some injury. So that's error and omission, like, or something where I omitted or I made a mistake somewhere in my business, and that will cover it, right? All of a sudden now they will cover it and pay for it. But there's also another one, liability, right? Do you have the liability part of the insurance, right? So I have an office space. Somebody comes to my office space and I just mopped and I don't have my caution sign out, and they slip and fall and break their arm. All of a sudden they're going to sue me because I didn't have my office space properly taken care of, or my storefront, or wherever I'm at, the physical stuff. All of a sudden now I'm liable for that sort of information stuff. And now I have to have insurance for that. You know, a lot of people nowadays have the virtual, I work from home, I don't have any commercial space, I don't do anything like that. So a lot of them don't have that liability aspect, right? But liability can also coverage anything your product does. Let's say I have a product that has a lithium battery in it, and I go off and I ship it off and it blows up in the customer's hands, right? Like the Samsungs used to, right? Or we took them on a plane, whatever. That is a liability you now have, right? So there are different types of liability. There's premise liability, there's product liability. So depending on what your business is, you really need to sit down with an expert and make sure that you have the errors and omission and the proper liability coverage for the type of business that you do. So right now, as an insurance agent, if I say, hey, yes, you have coverage, but then I write it wrong, guess what? My errors and omissions insurance is going to pay out of the nose for that because I did something wrong and I made the error. And I told them they have the coverage when they didn't. So there's a lot of things there that we need to be careful of. And with that, you always need E&O, right? And you always need some type of liability depending on what your product is or your service is. And that really comes down, I can't say more enough, sit down with an expert, sit down with somebody who knows your business and be able to tailor your insurance properly.
Yeah, definitely. What kind of questions, say I'm a business owner, I'm thinking, okay, I don't know if I'm fully covered. What kind of questions would you recommend them ask themselves to see if they're fully covered or to kind of understand their situation?
When it comes down to kind of like limits of liability, right? A lot of it comes down to what kind of business are they in? And let's say they make little knickknacks that, you know, a kid chokes on, right? Is he really going to be responsible for it? But let's say he makes something that the kid will drive, right? A go-kart or something. Now all of a sudden there's a lot more liability involved, right? And so the different types of liability, generally speaking, most businesses need 1 million per instance, 2 million per aggregate. And what that means is within a year's time frame, the insurance company will pay up to $2 million worth of damages over multiple claims, but no more than $1 million per claim. And that will cover, I would say most, especially if you have an online business, something like that, that'll cover everything you need to do. But if you have anything else involved with people, animals, getting out in nature, I know there's even a lot of, even for charities, right? It's like, hey, we take people out and we take veterans out and do equine therapy, whatever it is. They still need to have that E&O and that liability insurance in case something happens, just so that people are taken care of, right? So it just depends on what it is and what their business is. I can't give a number, but I'd say for most small businesses that they don't, right? They're online, they do the shirts or they do whatever they do, and they're from home, they're home based, they don't do a lot of stuff. I say the 1 million, 2 million would be more than enough, right? But for everybody else, I'd say it's got to be tailored.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing just to throw out is clarification for if someone has, say, a multi-level marketing business, right? Now that the company they're working with technically has some of that in place, right? They're not liable for products of a company, right? Just to kind of clarify that.
So yeah, it depends on the manufacturer of the company. If they're just the seller, right, that would be different. And then they need an errors and omissions in case they misrepresented the product or something else. But it just depends on also the writing the contract with the MLM, right? Right. So and a lot of veterans, they do franchises because they give them a set of rules. They just have to be successful. They're like, I can follow rules and I can be successful. And they move out and do that, right? Franchises will say, hey, we are liable for this portion. You're liable for this portion. And you need to have this minimum insurance. They usually spell it out for you. So and that's pretty easy to do. You just got to find the right agent to help you set that up.
Good to know. And I guess as you bring that up, I'm going to put a little plug in for one of our other keynote speakers. We're going to talk about the legal side of things. We've been talking a lot about taxes and finance and insurance, but that's something very important as well, because if you don't have a good attorney, when you're buying a business that knows how to read that fine print, you might get into something that you don't really know, like you brought up. So talking to your insurance agent and also talking to your attorney would be a very wise decision. Also talking to your accountant,
Right.
because you need to know the tax strategies and the write-offs you're going to be able to have for your business. So
Right.
just wanted to throw that in. Everything kind of comes full circle when it comes to business.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, let's go. This is a good visual here. You want to kind of explain a little bit about this and kind of the full picture of insurance?
Well, and so this is kind of my shameless plug, right here. There's a couple of different final thoughts, right? I've already mentioned get an insurance expert, right? You can go online and type in a bunch of numbers and get an insurance quote from pretty much anybody. Okay, but is that the right coverage you need? Have you read all the fine print? Do you understand all the fine print? And is it really what you're looking for? And and one thing I'll mention is, like, if I call that company up and say, hey, should I do a quote? Should I do a insurance claim on this? Guess what? You just did. Whether you take any money or anything else from it, you just did an insurance claim. And they'll find out, they'll keep it on record. And when your insurance renews, they're like, well, I didn't take any money from you. I just asked if I should do it. And they'll be like, yeah, but you reported it. So it's on there and it will affect your rates. So a couple of things is, so I'm plugging my Goosehead insurance, right? Is my variety, right? You have single carriers. USA is a great single carrier. A lot of people are happy with them. I'm not knocking them. They're great, right? But they fit in a certain market. They don't in others. So just depending on where you're at. I shop them around every time. I still like them. They don't provide what I need at the best price. And then, but there's like State Farm, Allstate, all these others. They are individual companies. Geico, right? They're individual companies. They have a low retention rate because they only have one product. They only have one bullet, right? And it doesn't fit every gun. So there's that. A lot of independents will have between 10 to 20 different companies. So you may go talk to one independent. It's like, okay, he gave me some good rates with a couple different carriers, but this guy has another 10 to different 20. Some of them overlap, but he doesn't have the broadest range, right? Goosehead Insurance, my insurance company, throughout the nation, we have over 80 plus. And on average, each state has around 30 to 50 different carriers that they have. So usually double the average of the average independent carrier. That means I can shop a lot more, have a lot more flexibility, and do a lot more for my clients. And that's what I like to do and that's why I keep them so long, right? It says 88% retention, right? They stay with us because even if their rates go up or something happens, or they're like, hey, they call me, hey, should I do a claim on this? Yes or no. It doesn't get reported. They call me, all of a sudden, hey, you're good. You don't have to call the company directly. You can call me and I'll tell you whether you should do one or not and advise you. That's kind of my job, right? Plus at the moment, we have 46 different carriers here in the state of Georgia. So I can shop around a lot of carriers and easily and streamlined. I can do it in 5-10 minutes, and so it really makes a difference. So, and then I represent you guys, right, instead of the company. So that's the big difference for me is you get an expert, you get somebody who has the flexibility to find what fits you and protects you. And then we have, that customer service aspect as well, right? How do they treat you when something happens, right? And help guide you through that whole process.
Phenomenal. Well, thanks so much for coming and speaking to us today, Ben. A lot of great information, some things I learned new, and I've been doing this for a while where I collaborate with other insurance professionals. So that's phenomenal. So what's the best way to reach you? I know I have the contact information at the front that we'll make sure everybody has. Do you have an email? Do you have a website that you could reference people to go to?
No, I have a Facebook page I prefer people go to, right? Just Ben Goodrich, Goosehead Insurance, right? And we can send that link out. You just email me at ben.goodrich@goosehead.com. It's really easy. I don't do it complicated, right? Or my phone number. You can give me a call. I also take text on my business phone, so you can text me too. So
okay, personal touch, like it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, well, thank you so much for coming with us today and speaking. And If you have any questions, feel free to leave in the comments. If you're watching this on one of our live Facebook streams, and if not, of course, wherever you did see this video, feel free to reach back out and we'll connect you back with Ben to learn more. So thanks so much, Ben and Josh, for being here with me today, and we look forward to talking to you all soon.
All right. Thank you, Chris. Thanks, Josh.
Definitely. Good talk with you, Ben.
You too.